In the heart of Botswana's Okavango Delta, where rivers braid through golden plains, the year 2021 brought a silence the locals had never known. The rains, once so faithful, had vanished for nearly 6 months. Pools where hippos wallowed turned into bowls of cracked earth, and the air shimmered with heat so fierce that even the acacia trees seemed to bend under its weight. The marshes dried, leaving behind nothing but dust and the memory of green. Among the creatures trapped in this merciless drought was a young African fish eagle named Quito. Barely 2 years old, he had just begun to fly on his own when the waters that fed his home began to retreat. Each morning, he soared low over the desiccated channels where fish once danced below the surface. Now, only bones and brittle reeds lay beneath him. His mother, older and wiser, had guided him to search further north. But with every passing week, her wings beat slower, her calls weaker. Hunting had become a ritual of desperation, searching for frogs in puddles, scavenging from carcasses, fighting off vultures twice their number. Then one morning, Quito awoke to silence. The perch beside him was empty. His mother was gone. No sound, no trace, only the faint echo of her cry drifting across the wind. He called out again and again, his sharp voice slicing the dry air, but the delta did not answer. From that day, Quito wandered alone. Hunger gnawed at his strength. His feathers lost their sheen, his eyes dulled, and his once powerful wings began to tremble with each flight. He tried to catch what little life remained, tiny rodents, beetles, anything that moved, but most days ended in failure. When the sun burned high, he took refuge in the shade of a thorn tree, watching the mirages ripple across the horizon. The world had become still, except for the buzz of flies and the occasional caw of crows circling above. Days turned into weeks. Quito's cries grew faint, his flight slower. He drifted westward, drawn by instinct, by hope, perhaps by memory. And one afternoon, as the crimson sky deepened over the plains, he saw something gleaming in the distance. It wasn't water. It was metal. Below him stretched a winding dirt road, and at its end, a small research station, a lonely cluster of tents and trucks parked beside what was once a marsh. There, a young ornithologist named Dr. Amara Ndlovu was preparing to leave. For months, she had studied the collapse of the delta's ecosystem, recording the death of fish populations and the migrations that failed to return. Her last day was meant to be quiet, a final note in her field journal before heading back to Gaborone. But then she saw him. A faint shape against the dying sun, a bird spiraling downward, wings jerking weakly as if fighting invisible chains. The silhouette grew closer until she could see the distinct white head, the brown wings, the unmistakable mark of a fish eagle. He crashed not far from her camp, in a whirl of dust and silence. Amara ran. When she reached him, Quito was lying still, his wings splayed awkwardly, his chest rising in shallow, painful breaths. The once fierce eyes of the delta's hunter were half closed, clouded with exhaustion. His claws twitched, not in defense, but in weakness. Amara knelt beside him, torn between awe and grief. She knew eagles rarely allowed humans close, yet this one made no move to resist. Slowly, carefully, she lifted him into a crate padded with cloth. That night, under a sky littered with stars, Amara sat beside the crate, whispering softly as if her voice could keep him alive. She melted a few drops of water onto her fingers and touched them to his beak. He stirred just slightly, and she smiled through tears. "Hold on," she murmured. "You're not alone anymore." For the next 3 days, she nursed him with small pieces of fish thawed from her freezer, and clean water collected from her dwindling supply. Each time he swallowed, she felt a flicker of hope reignite. His eyes began to open more often, following her movements. Once, when she whistled, he blinked slowly, as if recognizing the kindness behind the sound. But time was running out. The research station was closing. The supplies were nearly gone. Amara made a decision. She would take Quito with her to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center in Mon, nearly 200 kilometers away. The journey would not be easy. The roads were rough, the heat relentless, and the eagle still too weak to fly. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she felt the same determination she saw in the Savannah survivors. At dawn, she placed the crate in the back seat of her dusty Jeep, whispered a quiet prayer, and began the long drive south. Hours passed. The road shimmered like molten glass. Occasionally, Quito let out a faint cry from the crate, a sound that carried both pain and defiance. Amara spoke to him constantly, telling him stories of the delta's return, of the rains that would someday fall again. By midday, the horizon darkened, not with rain, but with smoke. A brush fire had erupted near the road ahead, fueled by the dry grass and fierce wind. Flames licked at the sky as ash began to fall like snow. Amara's heart pounded. Turning back wasn't an option. The detour would cost them hours, and Quito needed care soon. She pressed on, gripping the wheel tightly as sparks danced across the windshield. Inside the crate, the eagle trembled. Amara sang softly, a lullaby her grandmother once hummed on stormy nights. The sound mingled with the roar of the fire, two worlds colliding, human fear and wild instinct. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they emerged from the smoke. The sky opened again, and before them lay the small sanctuary of Okavango Wildlife Rescue. The caretakers rushed out as she arrived. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, she explained rapidly. Found him near the delta's edge. He hasn't flown in days. Veterinarian Dr. Elias Moyo gently took the crate and nodded. We'll do everything we can. 4 hours, Amara waited outside the treatment room, her shirt stained with dust and sweat. When Elias finally emerged, he smiled faintly. He's stable. Weak, but he'll make it. Relief washed over her like rain. Over the following weeks, Quito began his slow recovery. The center staff fed him small fish, gave him fluids, and monitored every heartbeat. Amara visited daily, sitting quietly beside his enclosure. She would whistle softly, and sometimes he would answer, a low raspy cry that grew stronger each day. As weeks turned into months, the eagle's feathers regained their luster, his wings their strength. Caretakers moved him to a large flight cage where he could stretch and test the wind again. The first time he leapt from the perch, his flight was clumsy, uncertain, but Amara cheered as if he had conquered the sky. By the second month, Quito was soaring circles inside the enclosure, powerful and proud once more. Each morning he would perch high, gaze toward the north, and cry out, a call that echoed with longing and freedom. When the rains finally returned to the delta, turning the cracked plains back into shimmering lakes, the center decided it was time. Amara drove back to the delta one last time, this time with Quito beside her, calm and silent in his transport cage. The land had changed, green shoots sprouted from the earth, and the air smelled of life again. They stopped near the water's edge, where fish leapt beneath the surface and the sky mirrored the river. Amara opened the cage door. For a long moment, Quito didn't move. Then he turned his head, meeting her eyes. Those deep, fierce eyes that once held fear now shone with wild strength. He spread his wings, catching the golden light, and rose into the sky. Amara watched as he circled above her once, twice, then veered north, toward the endless horizon. His cry pierced the air, clear and powerful, echoing across the rejuvenated land. And in that sound was everything, loss, survival, and the unbreakable will of life itself. As his silhouette disappeared into the clouds, Amara smiled through tears. The delta was alive again. And somewhere out there, a lone eagle soared, carrying her faith with every beat of his wings.